Chapter 3. Mirror of the Sinner. After hearing the confession of the dying Klavdia Ivanovna, Father Fyodor Vostrikov, a priest from the Church of Flora in Lavra, left Vorobyanov's house in a complete frenzy. He walked all the way to his apartment, looking around distractedly and smiling sheepishly. By the end of the road, his absent-mindedness had reached such a point that he almost ended up under the executive committee's car, state number 1. After escaping the purple haze emitted by the executive committee's hellish machine, Father Vostrikov became completely distraught, and despite his venerable rank and middle age, completed the rest of the journey at a frivolous half-gallop. Mother Katerina Alexandrovna was setting the table for dinner. Father Fyodor liked to eat early on days when he wasn't busy with the all-night vigil. But now, after taking off his hat and warm, padded cassock, the priest quickly dashed into the bedroom, locked himself in to his wife's surprise, and began to hum "Worthy It Is" in a muffled voice. His wife sat down on a chair and whispered fearfully, "He's started something new. It'll end like it did with Nurka again." Nurka was the name of a female French bulldog that Father Fyodor had bought with great difficulty for 40 rubles at the Mias market in Moscow. Father Fyodor had planned to mate the bulldog with the stocky, snub-nosed, perpetually sneezing male dog of the executive committee secretary, and then regularly take the offspring from the chosen couple to Moscow and sell them at a profit to dog lovers. At the sight of the dog, the priest's wife gasped and firmly declared that she wouldn't allow a stud farm. However, it was impossible to reason with Father Fyodor. After a 3-day quarrel, Katerina Alexandrovna submitted, and Nurka's upbringing began. The dog's food was served on 3 dishes. One held square pieces of boiled meat, another held semolina porridge, and in the third dish, Father Fyodor put some disgusting mixture, claiming that it contained a large percentage of phosphorus, which was so necessary for a young dog to strengthen its bones. From good food and tender upbringing, Nurka blossomed and reached the age necessary for producing offspring. Father Fyodor supervised the dog, argued with prominent city dog breeders, and only grieved that he couldn't talk to the executive committee secretary, a great expert on dog breeding, as they said. Finally, Nurka was put in a new, stylish collar with feathers, reminiscent of the wrist of the Egyptian queen Cleopatra, and Katerina Alexandrovna, taking 3 rubles with her, led the fragrant bride to the medalist groom belonging to the executive committee secretary. The happy prince met the charming Nurka with a gentle, far-reaching bark. Father Fyodor, sitting by the window, impatiently waited for the young lady's return. At the end of the street, the plump figure of Katerina Alexandrovna appeared. 30 yards from the house, she stopped to talk to a neighbor. Nurka, held by a cord, absent-mindedly described circles, figure eights, and parabolas around her mistress, occasionally sniffing at the base of the nearest nightstand. Within a minute, the pride that had seized Father Fyodor's soul was replaced by indignation, and then by horror. A large, one-eyed dog named Marsik, known throughout the street for his depravity, quickly rolled out from around the corner. Waving his tail, which lay on his back like a pretzel, the scoundrel jumped at Nurka with clearly matrimonial intentions. Father Fyodor jumped on his chair from indignation. Katerina Alexandrovna, engrossed in conversation, didn't notice anything happening behind her back. Vostrikov was horrified and, grabbing a stick in the hallway, ran out into the street. The scene that presented itself to his eyes was full of drama. Katerina Alexandrovna was running around the dog, squealing, "Go away, go away, go away," and hitting Marsik on his mighty back with an umbrella. The dog didn't pay the slightest attention to the beatings. His thoughts were far away. Shouting in a terrible voice from afar, Father Fyodor rushed to save his future wealth, but it was already too late. The beaten Marsik was hopping on 3 legs. A big family scene took place at home, embellished with many heavy details. The priest's wife cried. Father Fyodor was angrily silent, looking at the defiled dog with disgust. There remained a tiny hope that Nurka's offspring would still follow the executive committee line. After the allotted time, Nurka brought 6 excellent snub-nosed, stocky puppies of pure bulldog breed, which were spoiled by one small detail. Each puppy had a large, black, fluffy tail lying on its back like a pretzel. Along with the pretzel-shaped tails, the possibility of selling the offspring at a profit collapsed. The puppies were given away. Nurka was subjected to strict confinement, and they began to wait for offspring again. At night, as well as in the morning, afternoon, and evening, the depraved Marsik slowly strolled under Father Vostrikov's windows, staring with his only brazen eye at the windows and whining plaintively. Despite the prison regime and the new 3 rubles spent on the secretary's male dog, the second generation was even more reminiscent of the vagrant Marsik. One puppy was even born one-eyed. The success of the stray dog was completely inexplicable. Nevertheless, the 3rd series of puppies turned out to be carbon copies of Marsik and borrowed only crooked pedigree legs from visits to the executive committee medalist. Father Vostrikov wanted to file a lawsuit in the heat of the moment, but since Marsik had no owner, there was no one to file a lawsuit against. Thus, the stud farm and the dreams of a reliable, constant income collapsed. Father Fyodor's impetuous soul knew no peace. It never knew it, not when he was a student at the theological school, Fedia, nor when he was a mustachioed seminarian, Fyodor Ivanovich. After transferring from the seminary to the university and studying at the law faculty for 3 years, Vostrikov in 1915 feared possible mobilization and again went along the spiritual line. First, he was ordained as a deacon, and then consecrated as a priest and appointed to the district town of N, and always, in all stages of his spiritual and civil career, Father Fyodor remained a money grubber. Father Vostrikov dreamed of his own candle factory. Tormented by the vision of large factory drums winding thick wax ropes, Father Fyodor invented various projects, the implementation of which was to provide him with the main and working capital to buy a small factory in Samara that he had long been eyeing. Ideas dawned on Father Fyodor unexpectedly, and he immediately set to work. Father Fyodor suddenly began to make marble laundry soap. He made pounds of it, but although the soap, according to him, contained a huge percentage of fats, it didn't lather and in addition, cost 3 times more than plow and hammer soap. The soap then soaked and decomposed in the hallway for a long time, so that Katerina Alexandrovna even wept when passing by it, and then the soap was thrown into the cesspool. After reading in some livestock magazine that rabbit meat is as tender as chicken, that they breed in abundance, and that raising them can bring considerable profits to a thrifty owner, Father Fyodor immediately acquired half a dozen producers, and already after 5 months, the dog Nurka, frightened by the incredible number of long-eared creatures that filled the yard and house, ran away to an unknown destination. Cursed inhabitants of the town of N turned out to be extremely conservative, and with a rare unanimity for an unorganized mass, did not buy a single rabbit from Vostrikov. Then Father Fyodor, after talking with the priest's wife, decided to decorate his menu with rabbits, the meat of which surpasses the taste of chicken. They prepared from rabbits, roast, cutlets, Pazharsky cutlets. Rabbits were boiled in soup, served cold for dinner, and baked in puddings. This led to nothing. Father Fyodor calculated that, when switching exclusively to a rabbit diet, the family could eat no more than 40 animals per month, while the monthly offspring is 90 pieces, and this number will increase in geometric progression every month. The Vostrikovs decided to give tasty homemade lunches. Father Fyodor spent the whole evening writing announcements about giving tasty homemade lunches, prepared exclusively with fresh cow's butter, with a chemical pencil on neatly cut sheets of arithmetic paper. The announcement began with the words, "cheap and tasty." The priest's wife filled an enameled bowl with flour paste, and Father Fyodor pasted the announcements on all the telegraph poles and near Soviet institutions late in the evening. New venture was a great success. On the very first day, 7 people appeared, including the clerk of the Military Registration and Enlistment Office, Bendin, and the head of the Improvement Subdepartment, Kozlov, through whose efforts the only monument of antiquity in the city, the triumphal arch of Elizabethan times, had recently been demolished, hindering, according to him, street traffic. Everyone liked the lunch very much. The next day, 14 people appeared. He couldn't keep up with skinning the rabbits. The business went great for a whole week, and Father Fyodor was already thinking about opening a small fur production, without a motor, when a completely unforeseen incident occurred. Plow and Hammer Cooperative, which had been locked for 3 weeks due to a revaluation of goods, opened, and the store workers, puffing from their efforts, rolled a barrel of rotten cabbage into the backyard, which was common with Father Fyodor's yard, and dumped it into the cesspool. Attracted by the pungent smell, the rabbits flocked to the pit, and already the next morning, a plague began among the tender rodents. It raged for only 3 hours, but it killed all 240 producers, and all the offspring that could not be counted. Stunned, Father Fyodor quieted down for a whole 2 months and perked up only now, returning from Vorobyaninov's house and locking himself in the bedroom, to his wife's surprise. Everything indicated that Father Fyodor was illuminated by a new idea that had captured his entire being. Katerina Alexandrovna tapped on the bedroom door with the bone of her bent finger. There was no answer, only the singing intensified. The priest's wife retreated from the door and took a position on the sofa. After a minute, the door opened slightly, and Father Fyodor's face appeared in the crack, with a girlish blush playing on it. "Give me the scissors quickly, mother," Father Fyodor said quickly. "What about dinner?" "Okay, later." Father Fyodor grabbed the scissors, locked himself in again, and approached a small wall-mounted oval mirror in a scratched black frame. Next to the mirror hung an old folk picture, Mirror of the Sinner, printed from a copper plate and pleasantly colored by hand. Father Fyodor bought this picture on his last visit to Moscow at the Smolensk market and loved it very much. The Mirror of the Sinner especially comforted him after the failure with the rabbits. The picture clearly showed the transience of all earthly things. Its upper row were 4 drawings, signed in Slavic script, significant in pacifying the soul. This one prays, "Ham sows wheat, Japheth has power, death owns everyone." Death was with a scythe and an hourglass with wings. Death was made as if from prostheses and orthopedic parts and stood, with legs wide apart, on empty hilly land. Her appearance clearly said that the failure with the rabbits was an empty matter. Now Father Fyodor liked the picture, "Japheth has power," more, where a stout, rich man with a beard sat in a small hall on a throne with full awareness of his wealth. Father Fyodor smiled and, quite hastily, looking attentively at himself in the mirror, began to trim his comely beard. Hairs fell to the floor, the scissors creaked, and after 5 minutes, Father Fyodor was convinced that he didn't know how to trim a beard at all. His beard turned out to be slanted to one side, indecent, and even suspicious. After lingering at the mirror for a little longer, Father Fyodor got angry, called his wife, and handing her the scissors said irritably, "Help me at least, mother, I can't cope with my hair." The priest's wife even pulled her hands back in surprise. "What have you done to yourself?" she finally uttered. "I haven't done anything. I'm getting a haircut. Help me, please. It seems to be crooked here." "Lord," said the priest's wife, reaching for Father Fyodor's locks, "surely, Fedinka, you're not going to switch to the renovationists." Father Fyodor was pleased with this direction of the conversation. "And why, mother, shouldn't I switch to the renovationists? Are the renovationists not people?" "People, of course, people," the priest's wife agreed venomously. "They go to the movies, pay alimony." "Well, I'll run to the movies too." "Run, please." "And I will run." "You'll run too far. Look at yourself in the mirror." And indeed, a lively black-eyed face with a small, wild beard and ridiculously long mustache looked at Father Fyodor from the mirror. They began to trim the mustache, bringing it to proportional sizes. What followed even more amazed the priest's wife. Father Fyodor announced that he had to leave on business that evening and demanded that Katerina Alexandrovna run to her baker brother and take a coat with a lamb collar and a brown duck cap from him for a week. "I'm not going anywhere," the priest's wife declared and burst into tears. Father Fyodor walked around the room for half an hour and, scaring his wife with his changed face, spouted nonsense. The priest's wife understood only one thing. Father Fyodor had cut his hair for no reason, wanted to go in a ridiculous cap to an unknown place, and was abandoning her. "I'm not abandoning you," Father Fyodor insisted. "I'm not abandoning you. I'll be back in a week. Can a person have business or not?" "He can't," said the priest's wife. Father Fyodor, a gentle person in dealing with others, even had to bang his fist on the table. Although he banged it carefully and ineptly, since he had never done this before, the priest's wife was still very frightened, and throwing on an Orenburg shawl, ran to her brother for civilian clothes. Left alone, Father Fyodor thought for a minute, said, "It's hard for women too," and pulled out a chest lined with tin from under the bed. Such chests are mostly found among Red Army soldiers. They are pasted over with striped wallpaper, on top of which is a portrait of Budyani or a cardboard from a cigarette box beach, depicting three beauties lying on the pebble-strewn Bodomy coast. Vostrikov's chest, to Father Fyodor's displeasure, was also pasted over with pictures, but there was neither Budyani nor Bodomy beauties there. The priest's wife had plastered the entire inside of the chest with photographs cut out of the magazine Chronicle of the War of 1914. There was both the capture of P.R. Zemysl and distribution of warm clothes to lower ranks in the positions, and the dashing Cossack Kozma Kryuchkov himself, the first St. George's Cavalier. After laying out the books lying on top on the floor, a set of the magazine Russian Pilgrim for 1903, the thickest history of the schism, and a booklet Russian in Italy, on the cover of which a smoking Vesuvius was printed, Father Fyodor reached into the very bottom of the chest and pulled out an old, worn-out woman's bonnet. Wincing from the smell of naphthalene which suddenly struck from the chest, Father Fyodor, tearing the lace and seams, pulled a heavy linen sausage out of the bonnet. The sausage contained 20 gold 10-ruble coins, all that remained from Father Fyodor's commercial adventures. With a familiar movement of his hand, he lifted the hem of his grayish cassock and shoved the sausage into the pocket of his striped trousers. Then he went to the dresser and took 50 rubles in 3-ruble and 5-ruble notes from a candy box. There were still 20 rubles left in the box. "That'll be enough for a week," he decided.